company dedicated to enhancing leaders' ability to harness and optimize trust as a strategic business asset.
We define trust as willful vulnerability, motivated by positive expectations. So when we think about that definition, willful vulnerability, it's a choice and it's motivated by positive expectations. When you trust, do your feelings or your reason to drive? Which one drives your decision? Feelings or reason?
I think it's feelings. I think if you've known me long enough, I extend trust from the get-go. I make the assumption that 80% of the time, if you extend trust, you make yourself vulnerable, you're authentic, that it will play out in the positive aspect on the other end. Whereas I know, as I work with colleagues and different people, that some people you really need to earn their trust. And for me, it's as a human, I trust you. I trust that you're going to, do the right thing. I trust that you're going to come from the right position and that you're leading from the heart. And so that's kind of the approach that I take. But think it's something that's just innate in who I am and how I was raised and just how I was brought up as a person. And I have a lot of rationale as to why I extend trust, because I had a wonderful family that gave me every reason to trust every single day, because they always delivered and did what they said they were going to do, and they did it with positive intent.
Yeah, it's certainly true. Our family shapes a bit of how we look at trust. Absolutely.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, you say you're highly trusting, more generally, naturally. And as you extend trust to people easily, think about, do you also extend trust easily to other entities like companies? So non-humans or government or your car or a higher power?
Yeah, I trust that it's all going to work out. Like, at the end of the day, there may be bumps, there may be challenges, there's always going to be obstacles. But I do believe those obstacles make us better, and they were intended to be there for some reason. So I trust that at the end of the day, it's all going to work out. And I can have several examples of that where, I was leading the US for a startup that I built. We had a leadership change. We had a drug that did not get across the line with the FDA, had to do a lot of work on the back end after that happened. And it all did work out. The drug ended up getting approved after we set it up for success with another organization. All the people that were impacted ended up getting even better jobs because of the experience that they had at that particular startup. So one could look back on it and say, oh, I shouldn't have trusted, our clinical development team to make this happen. However, at the end of the day, it worked out for everybody, especially the patient community, which is, where my heart really lies.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah. That speaks to generalized trust. It really is part of who you are. I mean, some of that comes from your genetics. We aren't exactly sure about how that forms quite yet, or how much of that's attributable to that. But also, like you said, your upbringing. You had lots in your formative years. You had lots of opportunities to observe and to accept trust and to give trust, and it sounds like it worked out a lot of the time. Yeah.
I always like to say, look, my life has not been easy at all. When I go back and do my leadership journey, I kind of reflect and I'm like, whoa, I've been through a lot. However, it's always ended up, from my perspective and in my frontal cortex, of being a positive, pot of gold at the end of the rainbow.
Such a great way to think about. And at this point in your career, I think you are able to reflect back and sort of see that pattern that you've had. We think about certainty is only in decisions in hindsight, right? And so in times of uncertainty, the leader has to have more trust. And so how would you describe, your comfort level with uncertainty, and particularly right now in our environment feels very uncertain. How much uncertainty are you comfortable with when you're making important decisions, leadership decisions?
Yeah, I kind of work
Mhm.
on the old adage of you've got 80% of the information, you can make a call, right? And you can make a decision, and teams tend to like that and respect that because you can move things forward versus remain stagnant. And that's how I believe organizations do end up moving forward. If you get into the analysis paralysis for too long, that's where the swirl happens. You actually lose trust, and you need to be the one to kind of lead from the front and ensure those decisions are made. I'm very comfortable in making decisions um, with in uncertain times and doing it based off of what I know. I mean, you can only make the decision off of what you currently know, and you can't, in my opinion, one cannot be completely skeptical about what scenarios may play out in the future because there's several permutations of every scenario of what could potentially happen. So it's almost like the power of now. We're in the moment. This is what we know now. So this is how we'll move forward based on what we know now. We may learn as we go, things shift, things change. And so trust that you're able to pivot. I trust I'm able to pivot and change with new information.
Mhm.
That's helpful.
Yeah,
Oh
for
yeah,
sure.
yeah, absolutely. So think about leadership style and what you lean into the most. Like autocratic, I don't probably not that.
Yeah.
Transactional, probably not that. More bureaucratic or laissez-faire, transformative, situational, authentic. I heard that word. Adaptive, democratic. Servant leadership. Those are all different. Common styles, and there's mixtures of them. What do you lean into the most? What comes more natural to you? What do you enjoy the most? Who are you at your most authentic?
Yeah. So isn't the Daniel Goleman article, that's the leadership that gets results, right?
Mhm.
And explains all the different types of leaders, of which I think this was probably published. This is aging me here, but
Early
15,
90s.
20 years
Mhm.
ago. Anyway, but nonetheless, the one that I lean into from that particular article is the authoritative style, which is in essence, in the way I've interpreted it over the years, is the ability to set a vision. Here's where we want to go, and then empowering your team to get there, and making sure they have all the tools and the resources, and trusting that they will deliver and they're empowered to do their work. So that's how
Mhm.
I approach it. Are there certain situations, of course, where you have to flex a little bit and change, where you notice somebody's really struggling, and maybe you need to be a little more directive in those moments, and that's with all good intent. Or there's times where you need to maybe back off a little bit and be a little more casual, and to let the individual kind of figure it out on their own. So there's it's situational for sure. But I would say the majority of the time I like to be in this authoritative place where I'm setting a vision and leading and getting the heck out of the way.
Yeah, yeah, that's really morphed in the literature. That's really morphed into more transformative leadership, where
Okay.
you're setting them up for success. But it's not only about your your follower. So it's not servant leadership in the way. It's not just only pouring in them. We have a goal. We have a shared goal, and that's where we're going. And I'm taking you there. But you're going
Exactly.
to do it when you get there.
Yeah, and I think there's
Mhm.
also this point of like, and I'll care for you along the way, right?
Mhm.
So you're not left out to dry by yourself. Like, you
Mhm.
don't want to insinuate that to a team.
Uh-huh.
You want them to know you're there to help. You're there to make them not only better employees, but better people. And all those things are kind of included in that in my mind.
That's great.
Yeah, and having known Molly and worked alongside her for a lot of years, the idea of empowerment is something that rings front and center for me. You are authoritative in setting a vision and driving a team. People want to follow you by all means. But that trust aspect is the difference, because people trust that you're going to look out for them, and you're
Mhm.
going to make decisions that are beneficial, certainly on behalf of the business, but also on behalf of the people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm.
And I think one thing that comes with that also is just honesty and being honest with people about where they, particularly stand, or where you see where they stand on a particular project, in their career in general. And also letting people know how that can evolve and change, right? That
Mm.
isn't a point in time that's going to last forever. Like this stuff is temporary, and as long as you're having authentic conversations with individuals, then that helps the team dynamic also.
And on that note, I mean, you are a very trusting person. We've gone through just sort of your history and why some of that's happened. Curious if you've ever found skepticism or distrust to be helpful in a relationship, what that might look like.
Well, I've definitely been burned by my approach. I mean, but I can probably count on not even one hand how many times that's really happened. So I still like to operate in this world of extending trust, because you end up in a better situation building high performing teams. However, there's times that you extend trust and then you realize, maybe something political happened on the back end that you didn't anticipate, because you thought, the world was butterflies and rainbows and it was all going to be great. And then quickly wake up to the fact that, okay, not everybody approaches things the same way I do, or maybe they have a different intent and manage things differently. Now, is it always people driven? Sometimes not. When you extend trust, sometimes it's just situation driven, why things happen, maybe that you didn't intend. My husband always likes to say, happiness is expectations minus results. And sometimes my expectations are so high that can lead to some disappointment if you don't achieve the results that you liked. Sometimes you need to adjust your bar. Now, in business, that's different. I think in personal life, that's where you need to adjust your bar of what you expect from people. Because I think sometimes you're expecting individuals to be the way that you want them to be, right?
Yeah.
And they don't show up that way, and they'll never show up that way. And as soon as you can accept that, I think that leads to happiness, and that allows me to be a better leader at work, because you can manage through those relationships at work.
No, you're right. That's critical to be able to separate work expectations and the types of people and roles that we have in those environments from home life or from our community service. There are different domains of life. And so that I need to learn that every day as I move from one domain to another. As I think about trust, I need to adjust that. Do you ever distrust someone? I mean, you don't distrust very much, but do you ever distrust someone in one domain of life or one area or function or ability, and then concurrently trust them differently for something different? So they're good at something, but they're not as good at something else.
Yeah, I would say where my distrust comes in is if I've seen someone not be able to get something done, like a certain task or, a certain project. And oftentimes then I self-reflect that maybe they were assigned to the wrong work, or maybe don't have the right support. But then there's times, we talk about the skill and the will, right, portion of managing and leading, that there really isn't the will there to do it, or there really needs some skill development. So if I go ask, someone on my team to build me, a business development Excel model, and he's been a sales leader for 20 years, that shame on me. But at the same time, you sometimes ask people to do projects or to do things that you think within their wheelhouse, and they don't get done. Now, the next time I go to ask somebody for that particular thing, I'm probably not leaning on that individual. I'm not trusting that they can get it done.
This sounds appropriate. And when you
Yeah.
have options, right? When you have options for, oh, I can delegate to someone else, well, that's amazing. In some situations, we have options to push responsibilities to different places. And when we don't, then that becomes more difficult.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I would imagine that just is part of the natural inclination of who you are as a leader, empowering people, pushing people to reach their potential. You're always going to try and stretch them a bit. And some people are willing and wanting to be stretched, and others aren't. So, that comes, I think, with the type of leader that you are and why people love to work for you. I think about what you did when you started up companies. There's so many people lined up at the door who want to come work for Molly because
Mhm.
Molly does stretch and empower and allow you to be, unlock that potential.
Yeah, and I also think one topic we haven't landed on is just having a good time.
Mhm.
At work or whether you're volunteering or whatever you might be doing, I think there's this notion of being serious and delivering on results, but people want to come to work or they want to, especially in volunteer work, you need to make sure that the atmosphere is set up so that everybody feels that you're hugging them almost a little bit every day. And in addition, there can be some levity to what you do. That kind of comes into the trust circle for me, because now I can hold you accountable to something, and do it in a very kind way. A kind way and a way that is like, hey, look, I know we talked about this yesterday and I haven't seen it today. And I also know you're doing a few things at home. Like, what's going on? So you can kind of dig in a little bit better when there's this authentic notion that kind of comes back to, I don't even know if it's having fun. That's just maybe my personality. So just extending who you are probably is what it is.
Yeah. And all these aspects that you're talking about, these characteristics of, a leader that you are and who you aspire to be every day. I'm curious, is there a famous successful leader out there that you've met or that that you sort of model after or that you view as highly trustworthy?
Oh boy. Um, there's a lot of them. That's why I was like, I don't even know where to begin. So I have several mentors, throughout, I think, my career. Jac Leonardi, I think Peter Anastasio, who I think you also know, Amy, that I, have on speed dial for different things. John Arena, I know I always tap into for different questions. And these are people I can go to that even if I frame the question the wrong way or I say it the wrong way or I kind of botch it a little bit, they know where I'm going, know where I'm getting at. They assume positive intent. And we can wrestle with the topic to get me into the right spot. I also, our new CEO of Takeda, Julie Kim, I've known for a long time. So she's just a great role model for somebody that I've seen practice resilience
Mm.
and continue to display grit and really model for women, what leadership can look like and that it doesn't have to come in one form, and everybody can show up as who you are as a person. And that's the best thing for the organization. That's one thing Julie's really, really, really modeled.
That's remarkable for someone in her position to be able to model that and demonstrate that you show up with your strengths, and that makes us all better.
Yeah, Takeda just recently had a women's leadership conference. I don't know, and she came and addressed the group, and that was the one kind of nugget takeaway that I had is we talk about women's leadership and authentic women's leadership, and as if all women need to listen to one woman. Now I think we have the liberty, and I think it's a gift of having multiple people to look up to from a women's leadership perspective. I mean, you heard me mention leaders that I trust, and three of them just off the shooting from the hip are men, right? But I didn't that's who I had to tap into the first, 20 years of my career, but that shifted.
Hmm. I love hearing that.
Oh yeah. Hey, let's talk about risk taking a little bit.
Mm.
So are you naturally more of a risk taker or more risk averse, more cautious? And how does this show up differently in work versus family versus community?
Oh boy, my husband's like, I hope he doesn't listen to this. So, I only say that because I'm quick to act,
Mm.
right? So, I'm quick to order the wallpaper. Okay, this is this fits within the budget. We're gonna like go. It's done. I'm quick to act, and so I think on that side of things, I'm more of a risk taker. And I would say in business, I'm quick to act, but I also include a lot of stakeholders to be sure that there's alignment on critical things before acting. So I don't know if you put that in the realm of risk taking, but I obviously went and worked for a startup and had to do an IPO. We had, when I started, less than $10 million. So I would say that might put me in the category of somewhat of a risk taker. But it also puts me in the category of a learner of what risks are too risky and what ones are right in my wheelhouse.
Yeah. And it could change in different domains for some people. Some people are more stably more risk takers or more cautious across the domains of work, family, community, and or maybe when it affects you versus when it could affect others, like your employees or your children. That can affect our risk taking.
Absolutely. When the stakes are high, you're going to act a little bit differently when you're in a more comfortable situation where you're like, what's the worst thing that could happen here?